few minutes late. And the slow way of starting is to welcome you all to this. And this is the third time that Inside World Aid has done this kind of interview and little talk. Inside World Aid started here at IMC some close to 10 years ago. And it had a wonderful about 3 years of activities and then went dormant for a while. And then it was reborn with the help of the current crop of the IMS, IRC teacher trainees, wonderful group of people who are inspired to bring their practice into the service of the world. And it's a fantastic thing it's one of the wonderful things in life to take our practice and feel inspired from it to make the world a better place. And so Inside World Aid is a kind of a insight communities kind of humanitarian organization that's and we're still looking to we still kind of we have a few projects right now. Mostly what we've been doing is raising money for different programs. One of them has been for Kim's program, the GRIP, Guiding Rage into Power. And there's a wonderful Buddhist monk in Uganda, Buddha Rakita, who we know well, and we're supporting his efforts in Uganda. And also Metta in Action is a project by Carol Wilson and Greg Scharf, who've been supporting people in Burma in schools and clinics and things. And so we're kind of raising money for this and supporting these good causes we're connected to. And one of the great good causes is that which is Kim is working for, Guiding Rage into Power. And she took over from Jacques Verdun. And Jacques Verdun came to IMC many times to give talks. He often came with his inmates, or always came with his inmates who co-taught it with him. And this Guiding Rage into Power is one of the I think one of the most inspiring things that I know of that's happening in the state prisons. And I'm inspired. I go every year to visit. This last year was first year in many years I haven't been able to go. And it's just astounding to be in a room full of lifers, inmates, most of them who have killed someone, who in ordinary circumstances probably would feel very uncomfortable sitting and being with them, who are transformed in this very radical way. And I wish I had been transformed as quickly as they were transformed through the GRIP program. It's quite remarkable. And so the idea of supporting GRIP really inspires me. Then also the Dharma of GRIP, what they've learned about how to practice and to teach and to work through some of the greatest traumas that people can experience is something that we all can learn from. And so I'm very glad to have Kim Grose Moore here. And I'm a little bit proud of the fact that that Kim learned about this whole program through IMC and through the Sati Center's chaplaincy training program that we do here as well. And so it's just kind of like this star student who went through and now doing this wonderful GRIP program. So Kim, so welcome very much. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you.
You want to say a little bit about how you got started with GRIP?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first, I do really want to just extend my gratitude to you, Gil, and IMC, and also Insight World Aid, because as you said, you all have really been for years supporters and really kind of, we feel GRIP feels really held by the IMC community, and I believe Insight World Aid also co-sponsored a few years ago. There was like a benefit fundraiser for GRIP at IMC that raised money for us to be able to expand GRIP down to Soledad Prison a few years ago. And so there's really just such a beautiful connection between the work we've been doing inside prison and the IMC community and Insight World Aid. So it's just such a pleasure to be back here and to be able to connect and chat with you. And I did see some names of participants that I know. Bill Castora, who used to go down to Soledad with me to do the Sangha, the Buddhist services down there. So hello to Bill, and Abraham, who's been volunteering with GRIP for for the last many months, weaving the honor cords for our graduates. It's just wonderful to have that kind of connection of volunteer service. And I think I saw Tara Moulet also on the list, who helped to host us and some of our graduates on a Zoom call this summer to help us raise some money with San Francisco Insight. So it's just, again, it just feels really sweet and supported to be connected to all of you in these ways. So a lot of gratitude. And I know many of you know a little bit already about GRIP, but maybe I can say a few words about who and what we are. And Rachel maybe can put in the chat also our URL if folks are interested. There's a wonderful trailer 5-minute video that takes you inside San Quentin to a GRIP tribe. If anybody's interested in learning more about it, you can. So we are, GRIP is an intensive year-long healing and accountability program for mainly lifers, people who've committed violent crimes and are serving life sentences in the state prisons. And our tagline and the name of our course book, you guys would appreciate, I think, in the Dharma community, is Leaving Prison Before You Get Out. And the idea that I think those who practice meditation understand is that freedom is not only geographic, right? It is, there is the whole incarceration in our minds, the internal incarceration that we spend so much time working to free ourselves from, the kinds of conditioning and beliefs and habits of mind that keep us in some form of suffering. So that's a lot of what we do in GRIP, in the year-long program, and with people who have caused incredible harm and who have experienced incredible harm in their lives. And we do it through 4 elements. There's 4 elements of this year-long program: stopping your violence, cultivating mindfulness, developing emotional intelligence, and understanding victim impact. And we do it in circle, in a tribe that's sort of a group of 30 to 35 students, and to create the kind of belonging and safety that's really needed to be able to do deep inner healing work, we believe. And not just healing work, but also accountability work. So we're pretty proud that we serve about 500 students each year. And I think we are up to 915 graduates over the last 8 or 9 years, and 369 have been released already, who are now geographically free, and only 1 has ever come back to prison. So that's a 0.3% recidivism rate, and we're pretty proud of that. So as Gil said, it was founded by Jacques Verdun, and he invited me to become his successor a few years ago. We worked very closely together. He's actively involved still. And we now have 10 people on staff, 5 of whom are GRIP graduates who have been released. And I think about 23 total on our facilitation team. So this is just to give you a sense. This is like the picture of who we are now. And many of them are graduates of the program who have been released, who are now going back in to serve their fellow folks inside, and show, be role models and credible messengers about what's possible. So as you can imagine, it's been a crazy year. Prison's shut in March, and we had to turn on a dime to offer the program by correspondence, which was really took a Herculean effort to figure out how to turn this very collective, very in-person kind of deep work into an individualized correspondence version. But we did it, and we're this month going to graduate more than 300 students probably through this correspondence method. So it felt like really important that we continue to be the lifeline to those students inside during this really awful year for them. I think something like 40% of incarcerated people in the state of California got COVID. So an extremely vulnerable population with very little power to do any of the social distancing or, none of the equipment, and just, horrendous outbreaks. And it really, in case it was not obvious before, COVID really exposed the gaping wounds of structural racism and the dehumanization that the criminal justice system is built on. And so in addition to the correspondence that we've been doing, we've actually also been doing a lot of advocacy around releases and decarceration, get people out. There are people who are sitting in prison who've been serving 15, 20, 25 years, who clearly are not a threat to society anymore. And we are spending, as a state, $80,000 a year to keep them housed and expose them to COVID. And it's just, frankly, it's a criminal system that we're running as a state. So more than ever now, with the kind of the racial reckoning in our society and Black Lives Matter, that we really need to be and want to be reimagining what the criminal justice system can and should look like when we get, when things, do shift over as vaccines get rolled out, and believe that we are a part of that, imagining what's possible in a more restorative justice and healing vision for that kind of rehumanizes all of us, frankly. So it's probably a lot more about what we do and who we are than I meant. But your question, Gil, was about how I got involved.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, because you told me the story, and I'd like people to hear it, that it was so personal, the way you first got pulled into this. And I'm really into, maybe you would say a little bit about that story, but also what personally this has been like for you. And as a practitioner, how has this been part of your practice, or how have you grown through this work?
Yeah. Yes, well, very much personal and connected to you and to IMC. So I think I was a chaplaincy student, and when I first was exposed to and met Jacques at IMC, when he came with some graduates to a Sunday morning, and I was, moved and impressed with overall their presentation. But it was at the end that really something happened that was kind of transformative for me. One of the graduates, a guy named Terrell Merritt, who was a facilitator, he had graduated from the program, then he trained as a facilitator, and then he was released and he was going back in and facilitating from the outside. And he came to IMC, and he, at the end of the whole thing, he shared a little bit about his own story, including that he had killed a man, and he acknowledged that harm that he had committed. And then he, just in a very simple and heartfelt way, he looked out at us and sitting in the audience and said, on behalf, for all of you, any of you who have experienced harm in your lives, I want to, on behalf of people who have committed such harm, I want to apologize to you. You did not deserve to be, to have the pain that was imposed on you. And I'm so sorry for what you had to go through. And it was just so simple and heartfelt. And I started to weep, and I felt a recognition of a longing for that kind of an apology that I didn't even know I had. And it opened up something in me that allowed for some greater healing beyond that. But it was just such a simple and clear moment that he offered, a healing moment. And yeah, I thought I need to know more about who these people are and how they do this, because this is powerful.
And then now that you've so been involved so closely for these years, how has that affected you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then the other strand of sort of how my journey kind of took me to GRIP. I much of my background before doing the chaplaincy program and joining GRIP, I had been a community organizer and doing a lot of grassroots political work and racial justice and social justice, economic justice kind of work, and at a policy level, at a regional and state level. And yet there was a part of me that I was always looking for how to, in my own practice, where is my heart leaving people out? Where, how am I, there's a lovely phrase that I think of a lot called the sphere of human concern. So where am I leaving out, or are we as a society leaving people out of the sphere of human concern? And it's both at kind of the individual level, but also at the social or, larger cultural level. Who are we leaving out of our hearts? And for me, what I realized at around that same time that I met Jacques was very much that the incarcerated population was a population that was invisible to me, that as from my own background, and it really was sort of a place of ignorance because of where I, white, educated, I, from the privilege of how and when I grew up, I didn't ever have to have dealt with a criminal justice system that frankly is there to protect people like me from having to deal with it. And so that was an awareness that I'd never been inside a prison. And then the other, what I realized that another kind of group of people that I was more actively leaving out of my heart were men who had committed harm against women. And when I realized that there was an active resistance for me about that I began to explore what's the way to heal myself and be able to open my heart to these communities and people that I have been pushing away. And so, yeah, going in, I started to train as a facilitator about 5-6 years ago, and have been going in and facilitating a few different prisons since. And sitting in that circle and offering the GRIP training, really, in some cases as a facilitator, in some cases as a teacher, a lot of it as a witness, has been the most heart opening and heart challenging experience of my life, for sure. Maybe the only other thing somewhat close to it is having a child and being a mom. But it's that same depth of intensity of just heart-wrenching, heart-breaking, heart-opening kind of experience to walk with people who are so dedicated and determined and courageous to look at their own histories and pain together.
Thank you. And so I've been going in for many years just to visit, like once a year, for see a day of GRIP, and it's, as I said earlier, it's been astounding for me to see how transformed these men have become, and they tell their stories of it. I mean, some of these guys were the worst of the worst. I mean, it's pretty bad guys. I mean, they say themselves we were the worst of the worst, and they kind of needed to be in prison. Some of them, they tell, I needed to be in prison for 15 years before I could begin to see life in a new way and see myself differently. But then to see how transformed they become is so inspiring for me. And the protocol, the practices, the techniques that you have in GRIP are so effective for that population. I wonder, many times wondered, how can we bring that out of the prisons, and how can the rest of us benefit from that? And does GRIP have any plans or thoughts about the application of what they're doing into ordinary life outside of prison.
Yeah, actually, just earlier when Rachel and I were on, just a few minutes before this call started, we were joking about how, yeah, in some ways there's so much that GRIP could offer, to the world, to the rest of the world, and that these guys who are graduating could, and that's I think we often I certainly fell into this when I first started as a volunteer Buddhist chaplain at the jails or going down to Soledad, that this idea that we're bringing the Dharma in, that how do we expand the Dharma into the incarcerated population and sort of bring it in. And really, I've learned that it's so much more about a mutual walking with kind of journey, and that there's so much Dharma wisdom that is coming out from the prisons. And that's what's so exciting and extraordinary in this. And so in one way, the answer to your question is, well, there's lots of people who have learned and are coming out of prison, and that they are the teachers and could and should be the Dharma teachers, could and should be in our programs that are teaching the next generation of the Dharma, that could be running meditation groups or Dharma friends groups, or could be, so that there's just that at that practical level, there's just people who through their own life experience are now coming out, and they could and should be the leaders and the spokespeople for this. So at one level there's that. And then there's also the question, though, there's a level of determination and time and commitment and courage that it takes to do this kind of sustained, deep healing and accountability work. And I kind of have the question whether those of us on the outside actually, whether it would be successful to try to run a GRIP program on the outside, because we have so many distractions and our lives are so busy, and who would take it and would it really work? Whereas the guys inside, they have time and they have structure and they have a big incentive to do it because they want to get out. So I think there's challenges to offering it on the outside too.
Nice. So maybe the way this is set up, this 45 minutes, is to also do a period of meditation together. And one way to kind of maybe do this to bring GRIP into the world and maybe get some of the benefit for us from what you've learned and what the inmates have learned, is for you to do a guided meditation on that you've learned to do there, and give us a little taste of some of the practice you do. So I thought we would do about 15, 20 minutes of meditation, and then when we come to the official end at 45 minutes after the hour, 15 minutes to the hour, we can stay longer if any of you want to stay informally. If you have questions you'd like to ask him or want to raise something, and we can continue for a while longer. But for now, let's have Kim lead us into, and maybe it'd be useful if you used to imagine yourself incarcerated, and for good reason maybe, and she's going to guide you through something that might be helpful.
So before I start and introduce the meditation that I will guide, I'll share a couple of other probably familiar tools or themes that may resonate, or that just to offer up a few other practices. I think some of what, when I work with our graduates who now are on the outside, what they turn to and practice so often that is inspiring to me is certainly mindfulness, which is one of the things we teach. Also the tool we use called Q-tip, so quit taking it personal. That is one that's so useful around just letting things go. Q-tip it. Taking radical responsibility for our own reactivity is a really important theme in GRIP, and that I see practiced of our graduates and those who've gotten out, is just the capacity to take radical responsibility for our own reactivity. And ultimately to know and to make the choice for how to be, how to live, is probably one of the most fundamental pieces of wisdom that our students get, that is inspiring to me every time I, hear and see and talk to some of our graduates on the outside who describe that. But the meditation that I wanted to offer, when Gil and I were talking the other day, that thought might be valuable to share, is a forgiveness meditation. And it's one that we guide and teach. It's in our course book. It's usually at the end of the course, so it's towards the end. It's when we're doing victim impact as the theme, and typically we actually, a lot of what we do in the program is really not about forgiveness, because we actually teach, you should not ask for forgiveness from your victims, because that's one more thing you're asking them to do for you. And really, it's much more what we're teaching is around how to really develop that remorse to be able to offer a true, authentic apology. So that, in terms of what we're teaching around victim impact, is a really important theme, is to not to ask your victim for forgiveness. However, in the meditation that we teach, it's more of that internal work that we can go through, the process of forgiveness for our, working to cultivate that sense of forgiveness of ourselves, where we can forgive those who've harmed us, and that we can use it as an opportunity to offer an apology and invite our victims to perhaps be open to forgiving. So that's what I'll guide you through. Also, just a note for those, since those of us on this call, we haven't gone through GRIP together. So usually we do it, and we ask our students to, they've done so much work that they can do this with some of the most difficult people in their lives who they've harmed or who have harmed them. But you're going to get to decide, just like with any metta meditation, you decide how difficult you want to make it be for yourself, and don't feel like you have to choose the most difficult people in your life to do this meditation with. So I just want to invite each of you to take a posture of meditation that feels good to you, where you can be both relaxed and alert, awake. You can close your eyes if you'd like. And just settle in. Take a few deep breaths. Just ground yourself into your seat. And feel the breath moving through the in-breath, the transition, and the out-breath. We're going to start with a little bit in preparation, just a little bit of loving kindness first, to prepare the field for this kind of forgiveness work. So for starting, bring into your mind, maybe think of the first time, or if you were ever handed an infant child. Perhaps if you're a parent or a grandparent, it was when you held your newborn child or grandchild for the first time. Or if you're not a parent, maybe there's a time in your life where a friend or a relative asked you to hold an infant. And just become aware of the vulnerability of this child and its need for protection. Notice yourself gazing down as you cradle the child in your arms. Notice how unconditional love flows from your heart through your arms towards this child, unbidden and spontaneous. Take a breath and take a moment to connect with the experience of feeling this unconditional love and radiate it out to the infant. And then when you're ready, you can hand the infant back to the parent or the relative, the caregiver. And then imagine extending the same unconditional regard to yourself. Imagine holding yourself in the same caring embrace, realizing you are a child of God, Buddha, Allah, the Creator, however you're comfortable putting it. Receive and absorb that love until you radiate with the shine of it. And you can repeat this phrase in your mind, breathing in, I feel unconditionally loved. Breathing out, I remain connected to this feeling of being loved. So now we're going to do stage 1 of the forgiveness process, which is asking for forgiveness. So imagine someone who you have harmed. In the prison, we talk about one of your victims. Speak this victim's name in your mind 3 times. Breathe. Picture standing opposite this person and say the following in your mind. Feeling profound sorrow for the harm I caused you, I express my remorse for all the ways my actions have hurt you. When I say I am sorry, that relates to my genuine feeling of sorrow and the pain I feel for the harm I have caused you. I am sorry for crossing your boundaries and for physically hurting you. I also have deep regret for hurting you emotionally, causing trauma and fear. I feel this for you and also for how that rippled out to all the people close to you. I am sorry for what I have taken from you by these actions. I express deep remorse over the pain I have caused and perhaps continue to cause. I am sorry for all of the loss my actions have caused. I vow to never stop learning from the mistakes I made that caused this harm, and I apologize to you. I apologize to you. Take a couple deep breaths. And then to continue, you might say, my deepest wish is for your healing. In humbly offering my regret and in full respect of your own willingness or timing to do so, I ask for your forgiveness. Notice in the body what sensations emerge right now. And then continue in your mind. Should you not be ready to forgive, I will meet that with patience and respect. I wish to honor the rest of your life with my dedication to continue healing my own pain and learning from my mistakes so as never to harm others again. And then when you're ready, you can release that person from your mind and just return your awareness to the breath. Notice any body sensations, any places of tension, pain, or openness. However that part of the meditation affected the body. And then when you're ready, you can now imagine someone who has seriously hurt you, either physically or emotionally or both. And say that person's name in your mind 3 times. Breathe. Imagine standing opposite that person if you are ready and willing to do so. Make eye contact. And breathe again. Feel your feet on the ground. And if you wish, you can place your left hand on your belly and your right hand on your chest. And push in gently to get a hold of yourself. And breathe. And in your mind, you can hear these words and say these words to yourself. I am learning to recognize that hurt people hurt people. What you did to me has hurt me in a very deep way, and I need you to know that. In offering my forgiveness to you, I do not condone or agree with what you did to me. I am choosing to let go of my attachment to experiencing this pain because I recognize it does not serve me or anyone else for me to hold on to it. I forgive you for what you have done to me. Note in your body what you feel after saying that. And if you notice you're not ready to do that, you can honor that. It's more important that your forgiveness is genuine than it is to do this because you believe you should be doing it. If you are not ready to forgive at this moment, you can say this prayer instead. May I be willing to forgive you when I am ready to forgive you. May I learn to become ready to forgive you. Notice the body sensations at this point. Breathe into any areas that have tensed up or that have contracted in this last part. And allow your mind to release the image of the person and any remaining thoughts or images connected to that part. And take a few deep restorative breaths. And last but not least is perhaps the hardest person to forgive, which is yourself. So reconnect with feeling like you are that child of God or Buddha or Allah or the Creator or however you are comfortable putting it, and feel that you are embraced with unconditional love. And then picture the things that you feel ashamed of having done that hurt others. Picture the people that you have violated. Remember all the times you have abandoned yourself, have been self-destructive, or have forgotten who you really are. Breathe deeply. Remember the times when you were not patient with yourself. Take a breath. Remember the ways you failed to respect yourself when you were using drugs, when you used others, used women, were absent to your children and family members. Remember the times you failed to take care of yourself, to love yourself, and honor the spirit inside you. While feeling the unconditional regard for the being that you are, say, I forgive myself. And again, if you're not ready, you can say, I'm willing to learn how to forgive, or willing to forgive myself when I am ready. Or you can allow these words to wash through you if they can help. Perhaps I did the best I could, given the circumstances I was in, and given the tools and resources that were available to me at that time. Looking at it that way, I understand, even though I don't agree with how I acted, I forgive myself for forgetting who I truly am. I am letting that person and that time go. I forgive myself. I am now dedicated to learning how to stay in touch with my true nature as a loving person. And now we welcome ourselves back by saying to ourselves, as that loving person, as my healing adult self, I now reach out to embrace you, my younger self, that child that was hurting and suffering. I am so sorry that happened to you. It should never have happened. Of course, you did not know how to deal with that pain. Today, I can handle it. I will take care of you because I now have the tools to do so. I will never abandon you again. I embrace you and bring you inside of me. That way, I will always be there when you call for me. Notice whatever is in your body at this time. Let go of any images, people from your mind. Take a few deep breaths. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, so much for coming and doing this and giving us a little flavor of your wonderful work and the experience of these wonderful men that you work with. Those of you who would like to learn more about what Kim does, the, the organization now is called GRIP Training Institute, and GRIP stands for Guiding Rage into Power. And so this is the third of these monthly podcasts that Insight World Aid is doing, and we'll do them every month for the first Sunday of the month, and at this time. So you can do it again next in February. We'll have something, and so I want to thank you for being here. Those of you who are now going to leave, and for those of you who like to stay on a little bit longer, you can, if you want to raise maybe your blue hand, if you know how to do that. And then if you have a question or a comment for Kim, it'd be great.